is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Why do I do this? Why do I do that? Why do I do this drill? Why do I do this drill? Is it just because other coaches did? So what I realized is I wanted to coach my personality. My personality is I wanted to play faster, but I didn't really know how to play faster. You can say you want to play fast, but you got to be able to coach it. You have to be able to practice it. You have to be able to talk to your guys and tell them how to play fast. So that summer, I really spent a lot of time on how can I play faster.
Dale Wellman completed his 9th season as the head men's basketball coach at Nebraska Wesleyan University in the 2022-23 season. He was named the HoopDirt.com NCAA Division III Coach of the Year in 2019 and received NABC NCAA Division III National Coach of the Year recognition in 2018. Wellman has led the Prairie Wolves to 4 conference championships, 4 national tournament appearances, and the program's first national championship during his tenure. Overall, Wellman has a career coaching record of 205 and 128 in 13 seasons as a head coach. Wellman came to Nebraska Wesleyan after spending 6 seasons as the head coach at Alfred University, an NCAA Division III institution located in Alfred, New York. Before his stint at Alfred, Dale spent 2 seasons as an assistant coach at Williams College in Massachusetts. His collegiate coaching career began in 2002 when he was an assistant coach at Kenyon College in Ohio. A year later, he was appointed assistant coach at Union College in New York. He then spent 2 seasons as an assistant at NCAA Division I Eastern Kentucky University, where he helped EKU set a school record for wins and earn a spot in the NCAA tournament. Wellman is a 1999 graduate of the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee. He played 4 seasons for the Tigers, participating twice in the NCAA Division III National Tournament and earning all SCAC All-Academic honors. Hey Hoopheads, I wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Jason Franzen from Third Side Basketball Academy, and you're listening to the Hoopheads podcast.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering Hoopheads listeners 15% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code HHP15 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its Playbank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball. Take down some notes as you listen to this episode with Dale Wellman, head men's basketball coach at Nebraska Wesleyan University. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here. I will eventually be with my co-host Jason Sunkel, who will be joining us momentarily. But I am pleased to be joined by Dale Wellman, the head men's basketball coach at Nebraska Wesleyan. Dale, welcome to the Hoopheads pod.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely excited to have you on. Looking forward to diving into all the things that you've been able to do throughout your basketball career. Want to start by going back in time to when you were a kid. Tell me a little bit about some of your first experiences with the game of basketball, what you remember from being younger and getting introduced to the game.
You know, I grew up right outside Lexington, Kentucky. So, I mean, as soon as you bring up, Lexington, Kentucky, when you're talking about basketball, it's like a religion there. So it was, very early on. My dad played college basketball. He played back. He was actually on the freshman team at Kentucky. One of his, so he played there for a year. He wasn't good enough to play varsity at Kentucky back then. So he transferred, played at Southern Miss. They weren't Division I back there. Played a little bit. So he had some basketball, liked the sport a lot. I can remember, back then, Kentucky games used to be played on tape delay. And where I lived in Lexington, Kentucky, we'd stay up late, watch the Kentucky games. But just growing up in Kentucky, just basketball very early was the first sport that I really started playing, shooting around in the driveway, starting to really have a team and root for in the Wildcats. So, very early on, basketball was kind of in my blood.
Who was your guy?
I think it was fifth grade when Rex Chapman, growing up, and he wasn't there for 4 years, but Rex Chapman. But I can remember when Kenny Walker was there. Loved Kenny Walker when he was there. Loved Rex Chapman a few years later. Winston Bennett, like those guys back then, were my guys. And every game, I mean, I just sit there on the ground just praying, like, if they were down by 10, like the only thing I want this week, make sure the Wildcats win. So I live in Lincoln, Nebraska now, and it's very similar to how Lincolnites here go about business, except on the football field around here.
Absolutely. It's funny when I think of Rex Chapman, I always think about when I was a kid and a high school player, and Rex Chapman's just a little bit older than me, so kind of always knew of him. And that's at the time where I'm following college basketball, I'm following high school basketball, and I know like the top 50 guys. I used to read the Blue Ribbon College Basketball Yearbook, if you remember that at all.
Yeah.
And I'd pour through that thing, and I'd know every high school guy and this and that. And I remember watching Rex Chapman. I can always think that one of the things that when I watched him play, I always was like, man, I would love to play one game in my life with that kind of athleticism and just see what that felt like to be able to play and be able to run and jump the way that Rex Chapman did. And that's still, when I think about Rex Chapman, that's the first thing that pops into my head is, man, like just the tools that guy had to be able to play. And obviously he had a tremendous career at Kentucky and a really good pro career.
Yeah, he was, this is before social media and even just what media is today, because I did live in Kentucky and he was a Kentucky kid. I mean, growing up in Owensboro, playing at Apollo High School, like that was like, you knew about him before, he got on campus at Kentucky. Like,
right. Oh yeah.
High school basketball was king back then. Everyone knew who Rex Chapman was before he ever stepped on campus. It was awesome.
So what was your experience like as a high school player?
My experience as a high school player, I played at Woodford County High School, which is, again, right outside Lexington. My house, you can be downtown Lexington in 20 minutes. I was a very average high school player, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm 5'11". I was a shooting guard, not a point guard, had no left hand. I was a decent shooter. But, 5'11" point guards are a dime a dozen. Shooting guards are a dime a dozen in high school. So I was very average. We had a very average high school basketball team. Loved it. Obviously played with all my friends but we were probably about 500 for my 4 years of high school. And you're not going to see my name, any record books or anything at Woodford County High School for basketball. I was a much better baseball player growing up. I played both in college. But growing up, I was known a little bit more as a baseball player just because it was a little easier for me. But basketball is what I always wanted to do, it's one of those things. And I was recruited a little for baseball, going into college, and that's what I did. But I wanted to make sure I ended up at a college where I could play basketball as well, because that was my true love.
So how'd that work? Tell me about that recruiting experience and just how you went about making that decision.
Yeah, it's a really roundabout way. I was going to walk on at Ball State University and play baseball. I kind of had my eyes set on going to Ball State in Muncie, and had talked with their coach a little bit and was planning on going up there and walking on. And then for baseball, and it kind of fell through. And then coach left. They hired a new coach in the fall. I ended up going to Ball State, anyways, and did a year there, but really missed being a part of a team, playing baseball, playing basketball. Like something was definitely missing. And I knew I knew I was a better baseball player, but I also knew that I wanted to play basketball. So I called up schools. I really tried to recruit, schools more than have them recruit me a little bit. And I had gotten some letters from Swanee, the University of the South, out of in Tennessee when I was in high school. So I went to them and, kind of sold myself as a baseball player, and the baseball coach remembered me and, wanted me to go there to play baseball. And then after I kind of decided on going there to play baseball, I hit up the basketball coach and said, "Hey, I'd love to try to play basketball as well." And I think fortunately they probably that next year they only had about 11 guys on the team, and so they didn't mind having a 12th guy out there for practice. And I was probably the 11th or 12th guy, my freshman year, but I was absolutely living out my dream, being on a college basketball team, working every day and going to the gym. And we had some good teams in college, for Division III basketball. We played in some NCAA tournaments, and they were good teams, again, more in spite of me than because of me. But I was, I played, basketball and baseball for 4 years at the University of South in Tennessee. And, who had it better than me? Basketball teams were very good. Baseball teams were very bad. I didn't play a lot on the basketball court, played a lot on the baseball field. But it was like the perfect place for me.
So how did you balance those two?
I was a basketball player first. I always say, that's where my love was. So even like right when I got on the campus every year, they had fall baseball, but I didn't do fall baseball. I told the basketball coach, that's my time, leading into the basketball season. That's what I love most. And he understood. I actually had 3 baseball coaches while I was at Swanee, and had 1 basketball coach, but it was always basketball first. And really, to be perfectly honest, the baseball part, I say I played two sports, but, I did everything basketball until that last game. And then, I hopped right out there in baseball as an outfielder, so I just had to get my timing back a little bit at the plate. My arm was fine. They didn't need me pitching or anything. And, I'd catch some fly balls and throw some grounders back into the infielders, but just had to get my timing back at the plate. And baseball, for me would only run about, maybe 6 weeks. So, talking about managing the time, it was really just managing the time for for basketball, excuse me. And it's just 5 or 6 weeks of baseball. It goes by so quickly, that it wasn't too bad. It's not like, I was doing both all year round. I did play baseball in the summertime, but obviously I didn't have to balance any schoolwork or anything like that. But I was basically just a basketball guy that played, 5 or 6 weeks of baseball at the end of the year. And that was it. So it wasn't too bad managing time. Back then, it's probably a little easier maybe than it is nowadays.
Did you know it was going to work out that well? I mean, it seems like you kind of fell into a really good situation.
No, but I didn't know it was going to work out that well. But I guess I didn't think it wasn't going to work out. You're young and dumb, and you think everything's going to work out. At least I did, and it did. It worked out. And I couldn't have been happier being, a role player on basketball. That was perfect. And then, baseball went really well for me while I was there. But no, some things in life are kind of dumb luck, I guess. And fortunately, it was a big part of my life that was kind of dumb luck.
What were you thinking about in terms of jobs as you're going to school? Like, where was your head at?
If you think I had a roundabout way to kind of, start playing college basketball, it's a really roundabout way how I became a basketball coach. I had zero interest in being a coach coming out of college. Zero interest. Like, I was a history major. So, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with a history degree. But I had told my parents, I was going to go to grad school and major in architecture. You can get a master's degree in architecture. You don't really have to get a bachelor's degree. They're willing. It obviously takes longer. So I applied to a bunch of grad schools to become an architect, a major in architecture. Had a couple of uncles that were architects. I really appreciated architecture. I didn't really understand that it's more design than it is appreciating. So I actually went to the University of Florida to major in architecture for grad school. And I was there for one semester and realized that everything I loved about architecture, it was the history, the appreciation. It wasn't the design process. I'm not an artistic guy. I really didn't really realize how much creativity and artistry kind of went into the design process, and especially in architecture school. So I was like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do in life. So one of the guys that I graduated with, I played 4 years of college basketball with at Swanee, Peter Jones, he had taken a year off before he was going to go to law school at the University of Georgia. And he's living out in Jackson, Wyoming. So, I packed up in January right after the first semester at Florida and drove out and lived in Jackson, Wyoming. And, was basically a ski bum in the wintertime. And
Nice.
Yeah. And then
That's the time of life to do it.
and I was working at Jackson Teton County Park and Recreation Center, which was awesome because right outside I was a front desk attendant, kind of night manager. Right outside the door to the office was the basketball court. So like if I wasn't there working, I was there playing basketball against all the tourists that were running through town. And it was awesome. It was great. And then, once the snow melts, then Peter and I just started hiking around the Tetons. I was in shape. It was beautiful out there. We took advantage of that.
What's your best hike in the Tetons, man?
Oh man, I have no idea what the names are. I know that we did one. We did one. It was about a 20-mile hike in one day, and it's one of the sorest I've ever been. And I was in great shape. And you got to remember too, it's the air's thin up there too.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I was in pretty good shape, but it was I don't remember any of the names of any of those hikes that we did. It's funny. I can remember Grand Targhee and Jackson Hole and all the places we skied out there, but I can't remember any of the places that any of the trails that we hiked. But while I was doing that, I actually decided, hey, I got to figure out my life. I'm not going to go to architecture school. I appreciate it too much, but I wanted to do something with architecture. So I applied and got in grad school at the University of Georgia. I was going to live with Peter again. We had such a good time in Jackson, and went there to study historic preservation. I was going to be an architectural historian. So moved to Athens, Georgia, start this program in historic preservation. And then, so now I'm not working at the Jackson Teton County Recreation Department playing basketball every day. I should have mentioned, while I was out in Jackson, I'm driving around town and I'm listening to the radio. And on the radio, there's an advertisement for a coach for the Jackson Summer League baseball team, the American Legion baseball team. And I'd heard it a couple times. And finally, as I'm driving, I write down the phone number. And I called the guy up and I said, hey, I played baseball in college. He's like, hey, let's have lunch at Denny's. So I met him the next day at Denny's. He hired me on the spot to be the summer baseball coach for Jackson, Wyoming American Legion baseball team. Traveled all over Idaho and Montana and Wyoming, coaching this baseball team in the summertime. And that was my first taste of coaching. And to be honest, I really liked it. I never thought I would, but I had part of a team again, the stuff that I thought was pretty basic. The guys for Jackson had never heard of before. They don't have any, well, at least at the time, I assume it's still the same way. They don't have any high school baseball in Wyoming. So
Wow.
the highest level of amateur baseball, and I don't think the University of Wyoming has baseball either. The highest level of amateur baseball is American Legion. And I was doing some pretty basic stuff, in practice. And I really felt like they thought I was like this genius, baseball. And I thought it was all pretty basic stuff. And I had a fun time coaching. But anyhow, then I go to the University of Georgia. And now I'm not playing basketball every day at the rec center. I'm not coaching this team. I'm not part of a team. And I felt a little lost. But I was having a lot of fun in Athens. And finally, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a coach. That's the only other way I can be around basketball every day, be a part of a team is I'm going to have to be a coach. Never really thought of it before. And then I kind of made it my full-time job. I mean, I'm not in coaching right now. I mean, at the time, I wasn't part of a team. I've been out of it for 2 years. I'm a little older. I'm not that 22-year-old, coming out of college or whatever. Who's going to hire me? So I made it my job, to get a job. And back then it was different. I was mailing out letters, writing letters, writing some emails as well. But it's, not all the social media, finding out jobs as quickly as you find out about them today when something, pops up real quick. There's not all the gossip sites and the, Twitter where you can find out who's leaving here, who's leaving there, whatever. And, just kind of dumb luck. Dave Kunkel was the head coach at Kenyon College, and they had played Sewanee that year. And he kind of emailed me back and said, hey, I went to, Sewanee's tournament, I got to know Coach Tony real well, blah, blah, blah. Seems like a stand-up guy. And Coach Tony was my coach at Sewanee, and he was, trying to help me out a little bit, get a job. And, next thing I know, Dave Kunkel's taking a chance on some guy who hadn't coached in a few years, hadn't coached at all. And I get my first job at Kenyon College in Gambier, Ohio. And, at the time I was making about $10,000. And again, that was a lot of money compared to what I was living on in Jackson, Wyoming. So I was the happiest guy in the world to be coaching basketball and making a little bit of money doing it, be part of a team. And it was awesome. It was awesome.
All right. So you go from, hey, I'm not really sure what the heck I want to do, to now I'm going to get into coaching, and you get this experience at Kenyon. You have the opportunity. What's your first experience like as a basketball coach? What were some of the things that maybe you really liked about it? What were some of the things that were surprising about that first experience that maybe you were like, I didn't know coaches spend so much time doing this. Just what do you remember about that first experience?
Well, let me start off with saying Kenyon that year, we went 3-22. And, like I said, we went to some NCAA tournaments when I was at Sewanee, won the conference a couple times. And it was a unique experience for me. And I'd never been that bad. I'd never been 3-22 before. I never realized what really went into a scout. They always just kind of showed up on my desk in the film room. I didn't really realize everything that the assistant coaches and head coaches were really doing to try to put a scout together. And you have to remember, I've never put together a scout, and now the head coach is asking me to put together a scout. Where do you start looking? What do you start looking at? How is it? And it's not the technology you have now. Is it? It's back then you're just kind of watching film, and I was doing it all wrong. I think I learned a lot that first year what not to do. It's a trial and error a little bit. And I love Dave. Dave, I still talk to Dave this day. He's not in coaching anymore. And I thank him so much for just, taking a chance with me. But it was just the two of us, and he was still a young head coach, and it was trial by error a little bit, learning what not to do. And, got through that year at 3-22, and I was still I wasn't jaded at all. It was like, this is awesome. I can't believe I'm getting paid for this. It was, if I can handle a 3-22 season and have as much fun and enjoy it as much as I did, and see the relationship, it's a different type of relationship, obviously, as I had with my teammates, but the relationship I had is kind of the liaison between the guys on the team and the head coach, especially in a trying season like the one we had. Man, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And then just the camaraderie that I had there at Kenyon with the other young assistant coaches, and in a small town like Gambier, always hanging out, going to each other's games. It was just a lot of fun. And Dave ended up leaving after that first year. His wife was actually the volleyball coach at Kenyon, and she ended up getting a job back in the Chicagoland area. He went back there, which is where he's from as well. And I didn't really plan on leaving after 1 year, but when that happened, I was like, maybe I'll send out some emails, throw my resume a few places, see what happens. And it just so happened, Coach Murphy, longtime head coach at Hamilton College in upstate New York. Won hundreds of games there. He has no idea about any of this, but I emailed him. I'm sure he doesn't remember this at all. And he was just, he said, I don't have any openings here, but, a friend of mine, Bob Montana at Union College in Schenectady, I think he has 2 openings for assistant coaches. So I emailed Bob Montana, Schenectady College, Union College in Schenectady, New York. And Bob liked the fact that I had recruited a little bit at a high academic. He didn't realize that I really had no idea what I was doing with recruiting. He had no idea at all. And Bob was a well-respected coach, kind of in the upstate area, and he hired me, and I moved to Schenectady. And that's when he was a veteran coach. He was a good coach. He knew basketball. Nowadays I'm very much an offensive-minded coach. Like, the way I look at the game, offense always comes first. It's just the way I'm wired. And I think a lot of that happened, because of the year I spent at Union College, because I do think Bob Montana was a very, very good offensive coach. And we ran some good actions and had good team. We won 20 games that first year, and it was a lot of fun. I had another assistant, Kenny and I was the only guy. I had another assistant. We'd sit in the office all the time, Ian McShane, and we kind of figured out the game, the profession a little bit that year together a lot. But Bob really that year at Union really started my development as a coach. I mean, it was eye opening. Here's another thing too. Like when I played, in high school, we ran nothing but sets. That's all we had was sets. And then when I went to college, all we did was motion. And because, I was still young and didn't really know, I didn't realize there was other things out there you could do, like sets, motion, what are these other offenses, swing, Princeton, what is all this stuff? And it was really with, Bob Montana, because of the offense that he kind of ran, that I began to understand, hey, these continuity offenses out there, these system offenses out there, like a Princeton, or Bob was real close with John Beeline, and what Beeline was doing, his offense was very similar to kind of the 2-guard offense that Beeline was running. And it just opened my eyes to everything that you'd be able to do in coaching. And I plan on staying there. I actually met my wife. I didn't know at the time she was going to be my wife, but I met my wife, in Schenectady. She was grad school working at the university as well. She was getting her MBA there. And I met her there, and, we were hanging out, dating a little bit. I'm from Kentucky. I'd always gone back to kind of, see my family. And whenever I did that, my dad was a professor at Eastern Kentucky University. And I'd hang out. His office was in Alumni Coliseum, which is also where the basketball offices were. So I'd, go hang out with my dad. I got to know Travis Ford and his staff at Eastern Kentucky a little bit. I worked their camps when I came back home. And I came back and worked in Eastern Kentucky camp just the week I was home. And I go back and to Union. Like I said, I had no plans of really leaving Union at all. I loved it there. Great school, great coach. We had good teams. Just so happened that an assistant job opened up at Swanee as well, where I went to school. So it was more money, and I thought I owed it to myself. I flew down, and they, Coach Tony treated me as a true candidate, even though he'd coached me for 4 years. And I interviewed, and this is kind of the crazy thing about the business too. If he had offered me the job while I was there, I would have accepted in a heartbeat, and I probably would have gone to Swanee as an assistant. But he didn't, which is fine. Like, he's going through the process just like any other, search out there. He's treating me. He wasn't trying to give me preferential treatment, which was fine. And I fly back, to Schenectady, and I drive out. I'm working camp over at at Yale. And, I get out of camp that Monday, and the first message on my phone was, this is back when I didn't check my phone every 2 minutes. It was actually in a bag for hours. The first message was from Travis Ford offering me a job at Eastern Kentucky University. And I was like through the roof. I didn't know, I didn't apply for anything there. He was just calling out for me the GA position there, even though I'd been to grad school. And obviously I thought that was kind of cool. Division I coach calling me up, offering me opportunity at a school. And then this very next message, I had 2 messages, was Joe Toney, my college coach, who I absolutely love and adore, called me and offered me the job at Swanee. And I was really, really torn. Again, I hadn't even necessarily thought too much, until maybe 2 weeks before when I knew the Swanee job was open, about leaving Union. And here it is. I got 2 job offers. One, the coach that I love at the university that I love. And the other, hey, it's back right outside my hometown. I get my parents are there. My friends are there. Travis Ford, I told you how much I was a Wildcats fan earlier.
Right. Absolutely.
Travis, I watched Travis Ford play basketball. And I was really curious about the Division I level. Just, what's the difference? I didn't play it, hadn't coached there. So I took a job at Eastern Kentucky as the GA. Gave up my full-time gig to go back and, make a little stipend money and have to go back to classes again at Eastern Kentucky University. This would be if you're counting, it's the 3rd school I've taken graduate classes at. And
just traveling the country for grad school.
Yeah, it is. And that was awesome. That was unbelievable. That season, Travis was there. I was the GA. And we won the conference and won the Ohio Valley Conference tournament. As much as I thought, and again, Travis is an unbelievable coach. And, a lot of what I learned at Union was offensive side. I take a lot from that. And then you go there with Coach Ford, and it was a lot of defense and preparation. And I, being the low guy in the totem pole, I had to put a lot of the film edits together. And that's when, man, now it's all kind of coming together. I can understand this. I'm working with all the, assistant coaches there, putting their scouts together. And now I'm really kind of understanding how all this works. I'm also, as the low end of the totem pole, I'm doing all the stuff that I actually do now as a head coach of Division III. I'm ordering all the gears.
Right.
I'm ordering all the gear. I'm getting the meals. We didn't have a director of basketball operations there. So basically the GA position was kind of the ops guy as well. And then how about this? So then we have a great season. At the time, it was the most wins in EKU history. I think it's been broken since. So we go to the NCAA tournament. We got a 15 seed, and who do we play but the number 2 seed, the Kentucky Wildcats, in Indianapolis. Of course, obviously the storylines, Coach Ford coaching against his team, that he played for, but also here, there's another Kentucky kid on that staff, me, that's, kind of pumped to be playing, Kentucky Wildcats. That was back in the Hoosier Dome. It's not there anymore, but Hoosier Dome in front of 30,000 people that Thursday that we were the very first game of the NCAA tournament that year and played a great game and ended up losing by, I think it was 8 points to a Kentucky team with Tubby Smith and, Rondo was on that team. And it was, for me, it was just really cool. Not only did I learn so much that year, we had a great season. Top it off, playing Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. It was, I'm not sure if I could have written it much better than that. I guess unless, we beat Kentucky, that probably would have been better.
Yeah, that probably would have been better, but I get it.
Yeah. So, and then, Coach Ford, obviously did a great job at Eastern Kentucky, and he had to take the next step. and striking while the iron's hot. He takes the job at UMass, and there I am. Like, I'm not through my graduate degree for the third time. And it just so happens that Eastern Kentucky hires Jeff Neubauer. And I had no idea that might have been the best thing to happen to me ever. So Neubauer comes on board, and I'd actually met him before because, again, I go back, I told you about Montana, was good friends with John Beeline. And just because of that, Bob Montana knew Jeff Neubauer because Neubauer worked with him, at Richmond, at West Virginia. And I'd met him before. So Neubauer gets the job. He comes into the office, and I'm the one, I'm there, and he's like, hey, just me and you until I get some assistants here. And it was just Jeff and I for, like the first, probably a week and a half, spending ungodly amount of hours together. I'm not only, talking basketball with them, but trying to figure out how to, fly these assistants in, and then because I'm from there, I give them the tours. I give Jeff the tour. I give all the assistants the tour that are coming in around Lexington and Richmond, Kentucky. And, I end up sticking there, and Neubauer did something great. He did away with the GA position, turned it into a full-time, I think the title was administrative assistant coach, but it was a full-time position at Eastern Kentucky. And what happens when you become full-time is you get 6 credits. You get 6 free credits a semester that you can take. So I could continue graduate school so I could finish my graduate degree.
Nice.
So now I'm getting those classes for free. I'm getting a salary, getting benefits.
How about that, man? Getting a salary. How about that?
It was crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And so Neubauer comes in, and he comes in with the 2-guard offense that Beeline's, been running at, this was West Virginia before he got to Michigan. And, now I start falling in love with this offense. The more I learn about it, the more I find out about it, the more, clips I have to break down and everything I have to, he couldn't have been more different, and not in a positive or negative way, just more different than Coach Ford was the year before. Just very, very different. Both tremendous coaches. I got very lucky with the coaches that I got to work with. And this offense was awesome, and he ran a little Princeton in it. He hired Ted Hotaling, on his staff there. And, Ted's coming from the Ivy League. You've had Ted on, right?
I've had Ted on. Yeah, great guy.
Oh, he's an unbelievable guy. And, he's coming from the Ivy League, where obviously you have Princeton. I can't remember, somebody else was running Princeton in that league back then, like Columbia or somebody. So he was giving his, hey, this is what Princeton does, and we're learning 2-guard, and we're running some combinations of 2-guard and Princeton. And then, he runs a lot of zone, because back then Beeline ran, 1-3-1 and all this. And it just, again, continued to open my eyes up about all the different things that you can do. And it was, I tell you what, so that season, who do I share an office with? But Josh Merkel, not trying to get ahead of myself too much in this long, boring story about myself, but, I win the 2018 national championship, and then Merkel comes along a few years later and wins the 2022 D3 national championship. We were sharing an office that year back in Richmond, Kentucky, hanging out all the time, 2 single guys back then. And it was, it was great, and had a lot of fun. And by this time I really feel like I've learned a lot, just kind of in this profession. And, I guess there's a couple different paths that you can take. I wasn't necessarily all Division I. Like, I could have gone anywhere. And I kind of wanted to, see if I could go a route to become a head Division III coach, because I love Division III basketball. As a Division III player, like, I'm a D3 guy. And I knew I wasn't going to become a head Division III coach as the administrative assistant at Eastern Kentucky University. Like, I just wasn't going to get the interviews. And just so happens one of my old friends, Josh Leffler, who I got to know when he was at Hamilton and I was at Union, just got the Stevens Institute of Technology job, and he was assistant at Williams College, so I'm talking with Leffler, and Leffler's like, hey, you should take my job. Paulson does a great job. Paulson at Williams does a great job of getting his guys jobs. I'm like, well, that's great. Can you talk to him? He's like, sure. And then Ted Hotelling, just because of Ted's background being at Yale, he knew Paulson real well too. And he talked to Paulson as well. And then I had one, I remember standing outside my apartment in Richmond, Kentucky, talking to Paulson for about an hour and a half on the phone. And that was my interview. And then, about a week later, I'm packing up the car and I'm moving to Williamstown, Massachusetts to be an assistant at, Williams College. Meanwhile, the girl that I met at Union College, she then followed me to Eastern Kentucky, got a job there.
We're moving again.
Well, she didn't move right. She was making good money. She was making good money in the advancement staff, and she didn't have a job at Williams yet. So she stayed, and we weren't married yet. So she stayed back there while I moved to Williamstown, Massachusetts. And, working for Dave, again, I couldn't have been luckier, just getting unbelievable coach after unbelievable coach. Talking about a guy who just absolutely did a great job in every facet, offense, defense, the relationships that he built with players. And I think Dave and I were very different, and it was great. Back then he was running this pass and cut motion. He was a pack line, defensive coach, where I was very much like Princeton 2-guard. Hey, we're going to play some zone, or we're going to be like denial man defense. And it was really nice to kind of, work for Dave I was always amazed. Like, here's this guy who's won a national championship, and he's been, national coach of the year, I think twice by that time. And he'd ask me things at practice, and I'd just be like, he wants my opinion? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's nuts. And I'd say it and he'd do it. And I'd be like, what? Like, I can't, like, why is he listening to me? Like, he'd ask me stuff in games and I'd give him my opinion, and he'd do it. And I'm just like, what? Like, and I really appreciated that a lot from him. That was, I think that helped give me a lot of confidence. I think I had some, but helped really give me a lot of confidence just in my growth as a coach. And I don't know if I've ever even really shared that with Dave before, but that was something that, I really appreciated. I really appreciated. And I was with Dave for 2 years, and, we went to some NCAA tournaments, and that second summer, I kind of told him, I was like, because I took a pay cut. Remember that salary I said I had at Eastern Kentucky?
So much for that, huh?
Yeah, well, that didn't. You don't really get that at Williams. So I was like, I think I can do this for 2 years, and then I need to get, a head coaching job. And also, because remember, I got into it a little later. So here I am, early 30s, not making a lot of money. My wife's parents probably wondering why. Well, why are you with this guy? Like, traveling the country for no money. And my wife and I she's by the second year, we actually got married in between my first and second year at Williams. And she did move out of Kentucky, took a job at the University of Rochester, which is not that close to Williams College. So, but it was a little closer. So, and it was a good job at the University of Rochester that she took. So I was like, I got about a year. Yeah, after we got married, I got to figure some stuff out. We got to try to get in the same city. And then after that, I interviewed for a couple of Division III jobs after that first year, and I know some of that, it was obviously because of the Williams name that was attached to my resume. But that second year, I kind of felt like I was ready. I felt like I was ready. I'm not sure anyone's truly ready. But I kind of felt like I was ready. Like this is the time. I need to start making my own mistakes as a head coach and seeing what I could do. So applied for a few jobs and just so happened, and I would have taken a job anywhere. I'm sure I applied for jobs on the West Coast. Like I'm sure I did, because we had a bunch of kids on our team in California and we recruited that direction. Like I can't remember all the places I applied. I would have taken one anywhere. Just so happened that, I got a job at Alfred University in Western New York, which, if anyone's listening, they don't know the geography. That's not too far from Rochester. So it's also not too far from where my wife actually grew up in Corning, New York. So now it's all kind of coming together, My wife's an hour away in Rochester and her family's there. And she had a good job at Rochester. And because of that, she was able to get a pretty good job at Alfred doing the same stuff and advancement development. And now we're living together. And now I have a head coaching job. And now, when I got Alfred, it was, they were 2-23 the year before I got there. So I was hoping I wasn't going to leave it worse than it was, So, that.
What'd you like about the potential?
What I liked about the potential, there was nowhere to go but up. I think that was it. It was whatever I built, it was going to be what I built. I know that kind of sounds arrogant and a little egotistical or whatever, but whatever was going to be built, it was going to be mine. I was going to be able to kind of start from scratch, do what I wanted to do. I think that those were the things that I was really kind of excited about. And it was in the Empire 8, still is in the Empire 8, but it was a little different landscape back then too. It was, you had teams like RIT and Ithaca and Stevens Institute of Technology. And, a lot of those schools aren't in that conference anymore. So I liked the conference. I liked the competition. And I, at the time, I liked the fact that it was in a small town where I was just going to spend all my time, in the office trying to turn this thing around, trying to build this program. And, that first year, I had 9 guys on my team. That's what I inherited. I got the job in late July. So it really wasn't much time to get anybody new. I had 9 guys. Tough to go 5-on-5 in practice when you have 9 guys. And, I hired 2 assistants, and it was, Chris Amer is the head coach at Sarah Lawrence now. Like, poor guy, poor guy had to be thrown in there. I mean, he was our 10th guy, so we could do some 5-on-5 stuff. Go in there and, you got to know the stuff as a coach, but you're going to have to know it as a player too when you're running around there making sure you're doing the right thing. But it was really cool. First time I'm hiring my assistants, first time I have to, really come up with practice plans that make sense day after day. And but I was ready for it. I had a plan and went about it, and we went 8-17 that first year. And I mean, I still to this day think that that's one of the best seasons I've had as a coach in terms of just what we were able to get out of the kind of talent that we had. We played in a classic right after Christmas, where I had one kid had to go back for a family issue in New York City, and another kid was hurt, couldn't make the trip. I played a tournament with 7 guys. And no one was taller than 6'3". So, and we ran what it was like, Jeff Neubauer out there. We ran 2 guard into Princeton, and we played zone, and that was it. Like, we had to play zone, and I just had a lot of fun tweaking stuff, putting stuff in, coming in, tweaking the two guard a little bit, coming up with some sets that looked like two guard, and then would run for some different actions. And it was great. And that was the thing, was to try to build the program there, and it happened slowly. We went, from 8, and then you get up to 11, and then you get up to 15, and then we went backwards one year. And, that was kind of I say today, that was one of the best things that ever happened in my coaching career was, we're going in the right direction. And then I go back and I have a year where I'm 7-18, and it was a disaster. It was a bad year. It was, of all the years I've been a head coach, it was the one trying year where it was really tough. But it made me really take a step back and like, why do I do this? Why do I do that? Why do I do this drill? Why do I do this drill? Is it just because other coaches did? So, what I realized is I wanted to coach my personality. And I wasn't a good player, like I had mentioned earlier, but I wanted to coach my personality. And my personality, we were running this two guard into Princeton, and, the games that we did win, we were winning, 62-55, 68-61, and that really wasn't my personality. My personality is I wanted to play faster. But I didn't really know how to play faster. You can say you want to play fast, but you got to be able to coach it. You have to be able to practice it. You have to be able to talk to your guys and tell them how to play fast. So, that summer, I really spent a lot of time on how can I play faster. And, I watched, even though we weren't going to be Grinnell, I watched Grinnell tapes. RPI back then was doing a similar thing to Grinnell. I wish I could remember her name. The women's coach at UMass Lowell was playing super fast, doing some Grinnell type of stuff. And talked to her, and she had an older gentleman who was her number one assistant, and I talked to him. And it was, and I remember one of the things he was saying is, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to have to sit back. You're not going to be able to coach every possession. And that's the thing. And I wanted to press, and I never really been part of we pressed a little at Eastern Kentucky, nothing crazy. I never really been part of a team that had pressed though. So, you kind of put one in case, we always put one in case we needed it in the games or something. But I wanted to be a pressing team, every day. And